the thing I like to say is they like to blame it all on climate change, and climate change is your fault, but they never talk about the climate changers. And the climate changers have been at it for well over 100 years. If you go to weathermodificationhistory.com, you'll see that my first entry on a very lengthy timeline is 1839. So, yeah, I mean, if you go back to the 1800s, there was a guy named James Pollard Espy. He was known as, or Espy, he was known as the Storm King. And he actually made one of the first weather maps for the U.S. Navy. And this meteorologist said, hey, why don't we burn massive forest fires on the West Coast so that we can seed rain on the East Coast? And it just goes on from there. Really, the history could be broken down into three major parts. And I derive this from my personal hero, Jim Fleming, or Dr. James Roger Fleming. I just interviewed him at a weather modification conference this January. I went to Austin, Texas. It's called the 21st Conference on Planned and Inadvertent Weather Modification. This was at the American Meteorological Society's 98th annual meeting. So while everybody downstairs was talking about weather and weather satellites and selling all their crap, I was going around interviewing people going, hey, do you know that they're having a weather modification conference upstairs? And you should see the big eyes and blank stares I was getting. I interviewed the people from the U.S. Naval Research Lab, and I said, hey, what's up with HAARP? Why'd you guys sell it? And they're like, we don't really talk about HAARP anymore. Just fascinating to see the divide. I mean, literally, there's only a floor between the people who are downstairs, selling all this weather equipment and, slinging all their wares. And none of them seem to be aware that, there even was a weather modification conference going on upstairs. But James Roger Fleming, he breaks it down into three major categories, and it's pluviculture, cloud seeding, and geoengineering. And I would add a fourth to that, and that is space weather modification. And we can go through all four of them if you like, but basically it goes like this. Pluviculture is anything before 1946, because that's the early days of rainmaking. And what they tried to do were things like shoot cannons into the sky, post cereal. You've heard of post cereal, yep. Like the cereal you eat. The guy, it's named after a guy named C.W. Post. He literally went down to Texas and was firing cannons into the sky trying to make it rain.
So is he,
go ahead.
Is Post like the cereals that aren't Kellogg's?
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, the cereal rainmaker, like serial killer. He's a serial rainmaker. There were guys, the most famous of which during the pluviculture period was a guy named James Hatfield, and Charles Mallory Hatfield. He made rain for Los Angeles, and he was paid by the city of Los Angeles. This was in the 1914s. And he, the San Diego was like, hey, well, we've got a bunch of, drought down here. We'd love for you to make it rain too. So he actually set up these huge vats to burn chemicals to make it rain. And he made it rain so hard that it did several $1 million worth of damages. He was supposed to be paid $10,000 for the job, but the city of San Diego wouldn't pay him because in paying him for the weather modification he did, they'd be admitting liability for all that damage. And this is how the cycle keeps repeating itself from pluviculture to cloud seeding to geoengineering. These guys, they make promises. They say that, we can do the X, Y, and Z with the weather. And then when things go afoul, everybody gets, run for the hills. Wasn't my fault. God did it. Oh, wait, today it's climate change did it. Global warming did it. It's never these freaky scientists screwing with the weather. So, for me personally, I wanted to see the big picture, and I do that in several ways. I'm just a self-educated man like anybody else. I'm not a scientist. My father owns a trailer park. He used to launch nuclear missiles. So when my dad retired from the Air Force, we moved back home and we run the family business now. So I, live in a trailer park, and I freaking read a lot on the internet, and I taught myself to make websites. They talked about things like pouring oil on the surface of the ocean to cut off evaporation to steer hurricanes. Just like, this is the idea. How to halt a hurricane. A fleet of aircraft dropped soot in the path of the hurricane. Soot is black. Sun heats black. Oh, guess what? You can steer. Soot is warmed by the sun, heating the cool air around the very top of the hurricane. This reduces the flow of air within the hurricane and slows it down. Depending on where and when the soot is dropped, the now weakened hurricane will change course. So this was originally proposed by a guy back in 1976 called carbon absorption of solar energy, carbon dust absorption of solar energy, Gray et al., 1976. And Mosh Alamaro from MIT went to this Department of Homeland Security meeting and basically said the same thing that guy said. Hey, let's use carbon black dust to steer hurricanes. You can't make this shit up. And anyway, that's my video on her.
So if there's a way to suppress the hurricane or change its course and weaken it, I guess, is there a way to strengthen it as well? And did they research that?
I'm sure they have. Was there culpability? Could they be sued? I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We should try suing someone.
So let's get into what Darren was saying then to see what were you mentioning there about the
California fires?
Just recently, like this last kind of
yeah,
6
they were right
months,
after the hurricanes, weren't they?
Excuse me?
The California crazy fires there that happened right after the hurricanes?
Yeah, I saw a lot of stuff online about directed energy weapons being used. I saw some videos of that, and I'm just going to be real blunt about it. Directed energy weapons don't curve. And what I was seeing was a lot of videos of transformers exploding and people, claiming that this blue light is a laser beam from the sky. I want them to be as credible as possible. And unless it's something I can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt, I try to steer away from it because, I don't want to ruin the credibility of this. I mean, literally, I've got government organizations from around the world who are quoting my research right now. And I want to be able to, go to the United Nations, to go to Congress, to go to my State Department and do something about that. Speculating about, people shooting laser beams in California to cause forest fires. Forest fires have always happened in California. And if you want to be a little more realistic about what's causing some of these forest fires, especially in the California, Oregon, Washington area, two things come to mind. One is that the United States Navy has a naval warfare testing ground that pretty much spans the entire Pacific Ocean right off the coast. And they're constantly shooting off aluminum, barium, chaff, all kinds of stuff. Whenever you create a lot of dead wood through this hack and squirt method, that's what's going to lead to a lot of these monumental forest fires. So let's be conspiratorial about this. Are they talking about what James Espy, the Storm King, was talking about in the 1800s about setting forest fires on the West Coast to make it rain on the East Coast? Or is this just all a coincidence? Well, I'm not going to speculate on that, but I can tell you this. I've seen some pretty freaky videos of hack and squirt killing massive forests. I mean, like you see green everywhere and then brown, like huge, plots of brown forest where they have done this. So look into hack and squirt. It's some pretty fucked up stuff. I mean, you'll see what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
What is this anyone doing that practically? Do they think they're, or would it just be because that soot would create,
The soot would create rain.
Rain on the other side of the mountains for the crops.
So cloud seeding generators, Idaho Power cloud seeding generators, Santa Barbara, California cloud seeding generators, Carson Walker Basin, Humboldt River Basin, Grand Mesa, Colorado cloud seeding generators, Central Colorado Rocky Mountain cloud seeding generators, Wyoming weather modification pilot program. I'm going to turn on the NOAA reported weather modification activities for 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. And just to make it nice and visible for everybody at home, I'm going to make the map black. So this is weather modification on the West Coast.
And anybody can do this at home, right? On your website.
Yeah, it's climateviewer.org. Climateviewer.org. If you go over here and you look at this, what you see is these are the cloud seeding generators that are on the ground, the ones that look like fire. And each one of these mountains is snowpack augmentation. So you see right here, this is from 2012, 10,000 square miles was modified by North American Weather Consultants. So that's why they're always doing weather modification on the West Coast. And if I were to turn on the fracking wells, you would see that that's also where this drought is. So why don't we do that? This is a very large map. Bear with me for a second. But what you're going to see is that these three are related. This is one of the first big aha moments I had with Climate Viewer 3D. So these are fracking wells. As you can see here, all of these little oil wells. And coincidentally, where are they? They're on the West Coast too. And they are where the drought is. And they are where the weather modification is. And the reason for that is pretty simple. Fracking and hydraulic fracturing, hydraulic being water, they use millions and millions of gallons of water. And the water that comes back out is radioactive. Just a side note. But regardless, this drains reservoirs all across the West Coast. So while the West Coast is already water strapped, you've got fields and fields of weather modification. Here's your mountains that are getting their weather modified, and here's the fracking well and the severe drought in the location. It's not a coincidence. So as you can see right here, there's a huge field, and of course they've got a huge cloud seeding generator station here, so apparently they're doing pretty well on their water. Cloud seeding generators were first invented in 1949 by a guy named Irving P. Crick. His son is my friend on Facebook. He told me, you're the only person that ever mentions my daddy. And Irving Crick, he actually contributed to so much of this weather modification going on today. And most people have never even heard of the guy. I mean, most people know that like Benson Schaefer, Irving Langmuir, and the guys from the General Electric's lab, invented cloud seeding in 1946. But most people have never heard of Irving Crick. Here, I'll show you his pictures. Talk about a cool ass picture. This dude is cool as hell. There you go. There's Irving Crick. They just don't make photos like that anymore. He look so nowhere, But yeah, this is his original cloud seeding generator right here. 1949, Crick studies smog, rainmaking, not all that little articles about Irving Crick. But this Walt Disney film, Eyes in Outer Space, a lot of people have seen it, and it was about, steering hurricanes. It was made by Walt Disney. And the part that caught my attention was, I was like, all right, I watched the whole thing, and I was like, now, who the hell came up with this idea? Who was the technical advisor on this? And lo and behold, that's where I first heard the name Irving P. Crick. He says, the military says they want to create cirrus cloud cover to deny visual satellite or high altitude reconnaissance and decrease light level for nighttime operations. All right. If you got your UFO out on the runway at Area 51, and you don't want the Russians or Chinese to see it, you might want to make clouds that cover the sky because the satellites are in space, and if there are clouds, they can't see what's on the ground. Make sense? Makes sense to me. If we're in the Iraq war and you got a bunch of poor Iraqi, Republican Guard who don't have night vision goggles, then you create a whole bunch of cirrus clouds. You create a whole bunch of chemtrails. You block out the moonlight. It is darker than a mofo. And our night vision goggles are suddenly a serious technological advantage. That's why the military says they want to create cirrus clouds. This is real as rain. Now I'm really going to screw you up. So I'm going to go back to the Weather Mod history timeline, and I'm just going to type in Lyndon Johnson. And what did President Lyndon Johnson say? He said, wait for it, it lays the predicate and foundation for the development of a weather satellite that will permit man to determine the world's cloud layer. So here's how I differentiate. If you're talking Delta Airlines, Southwest, commercial flights, generally speaking, you're talking about jet fuel. Jet fuel makes clouds, period. And the reason it makes clouds is because soot comes out of the back of planes. That soot is loaded with metals, period. I can show you the list of metals. There's a paper that's called Physical and Chemical Characterization of Non-Volatile Aircraft Engine Exhaust. Here's what they found just in regular jet exhaust coming from regular jet fuel. Like
nowadays or way back?
Today. Okay. This is from, here, let me bring the paper up real quick and you actually see it. One sec. So there's two different things going on here. One being commercial, one being military, obviously. Why is this thing not loading? It's from archive.org, that's why. So back to the paper. The detected metallic compounds were internally mixed with soot particles. The most abundant of these metals in the exhaust were chromium, iron, molybdenum, sodium, calcium, aluminum, vanadium, barium, cobalt, copper, nickel, lead, magnesium, manganese, silicone, titanium, and zirconium, just in the jet exhaust. Okay? So metal makes these clouds. There's a group called Ulrich Lohmann and Jasper Kirkby from CERN. They have this cloud project, and what they were doing was they were looking to figure out what's going on in these clouds, what's making them. And it says the big one we found is lead, comes from things like tetraethyl lead used in fuels, still in some light aviation. So that's probably the biggest metal we find, but we find a whole host of other metals. So this is a carbon black soot, spherical as they call it. And you can see right there, PB inclusions. That's lead in the soot. All of the metals that we're finding in the sky are in this soot. Soot is burned out of the back of planes. So these fine metals, it said, well, of course you would need to do a whole lot of stuff to change the sky. Well, the paper is called Clarifying the Dominant Sources and Mechanisms of Cirrus Cloud Formation. Just recently, the Indian Space Organization found, the soot particles at 18 kilometers in the sky. And they said the only place they could ever come from is planes, and that's affecting their monsoon, destroying the ozone layer, and all that. So planes are fucking up the sky by what David Keith, David Keith, geoengineer, right?
He lives just down the road from us in Canmore, Alberta, I believe.
Oh yeah.
Really? Is he the guy who made the billboard? The billboard,
no,
or is he the guy who bitched about the billboard?
Bitching about the billboard, and he's pushing for geoengineering. I mean, it's a disgusting thing. Like all this stuff is mind blowing, and it's disgusting to me as well that we're even trying to mess with the weather. And I mean, it's a bit overwhelming because it's just rampant. I mean, people should really be in shock with this whole thing,
Yeah, so he actually wrote a paper called Photophoretic Levitation of Carbon Black Soot. And what he was talking about is here. Let me bring this up real quick. He's talking about the fact that that soot actually floats, okay, by itself. Whenever the sun hits the soot, it levitates. So as the soot comes out of the back of the planes, it goes up. And that's why I've got this paper right here, how jets make metal clouds, just the facts. And that's what we're talking about here. David Key said, we could, here's the paper I'm looking for. This is from the Indian Space Organization. Black carbon from aircraft exhaust is destroying ozone, melting the poles.
Wow.
And that's the black soot we're talking about right there that you can see clearly in that photo. But you can see right here, black carbons affect monsoons. Right here. Is black carbon affecting monsoons? The Indian Space Organization, ISRO's Vikram Sarabhi Space Center, and the Indian Institute of Science pretty pissed off about it because it's affecting the weather over India. Yeah. This is something that's just coming out. This is like September of 2017 on this paper. So this is new science. Now, back to your question, could it be more than just, the jet fuel? I say yes. Have you ever heard of Janet?
Yep.
Just another non-existent terminal?
No, actually, I thought it was Joint Air Force Navy something or other.
Janet, just another non-existent terminal. So the CIA has its own airline.
That's the one that goes to Area 51, isn't it? Or
yeah, the ones that does the special flights to Area 51 and all these. These are white, unmarked planes. Yeah, and those are the ones that aren't going to be on Flight Radar 24 for obvious freaking reasons. This is how they use 2 jet fuels in 1 tank to, turn the clouds on and off. And that's, that's it in a nutshell. They use the jet fuel electronic control unit, put biofuels in 1 tank, put JP8 doped with sulfur in another tank, and the pilots don't even have to know. This can all be done. Yeah, that's what I was
just going to
say.
ask you about. I mean,
the pilots are clueless to this. This can all be done from afar. This is geoengineering using jet fuel. The FAA has something called next generation transportation system. It's a supercomputer. It puts all the flights on highways in the skies. It creates the grids in the sky. It has something attached to it called the Aviation Environmental Design Toolkit, AEDT. And what that does is it tells them whenever we're going to make clouds in the sky, are they going to cool the planet or are they going to heat the planet? If they're going to cool the planet, that's a good thing. We can make carbon credits. If it's going to heat the planet, we're going to have to pay carbon taxes. That's really going to suck. So that's really, in a nutshell, what's going on today. So they've got 2 tests going on for this, Access and ND Max. They're testing these biofuels for contrail control. And that's where the rubber meets the road for real.
Wow. Yeah, you're answering a bunch of questions as you go along here, which is fantastic. But I mean, I remember in my youth seeing planes fly over and the contrail would dissipate fairly quickly. And, you would see it as the planes go through the sky, but it wouldn't linger around and create a whole cloud system. So now I see both. I see, so I wanted to bring that back to and I think you've already answered this, but just maybe clarify. So when you see those real persistent extended contrails, that's probably the fuel with the additives or with the metals in there. And then when you do see even planes at the same altitude, or you wonder why some dissipate very quickly and it just looks like a normal contrail, is that the difference then? I mean, because the weather's the same in the same spot,
Yeah, there are multiple factors in this. Obviously, this stratospheric sulfate injection with high sulfur content fuels could be one of the causes. If one jet is running this special fuel loaded with sulfur, then yeah, it's going to make more clouds, period.
Yeah.
And they can turn this on and off at will. There's a guy named Ulrich Schumann. He created the contrail cirrus prediction tool. Give me 1 second. I'll show you that thing. It's pretty fascinating. Here it is right here. Let me make sure. Yeah. So here's it in a nutshell. The ICAO Colloquium on Aviation and Climate Change. We need less soot emissions, less warming, and more cooling contrails, predictable for operational planning. And Ulrich Schumann is from the DLR. This is like NASA, Germany's NASA. And he came up with this jewel right here, the Contrail Cirrus Simulation and Prediction Tool. It is part of the FAA's AEDT, Aviation Environmental Design Toolkit. It's called COSIP. And what it does is it says, hey, man, if we're going to make clouds that are going to heat the planet, knock it the fuck off. If we're going to cool the planet, that's a good thing. Keep those clouds. I interviewed the head of the FAA, Aviation Climate Change Research Initiative. His name is Dr. Rangasai Halthori. And he made the statement, we want to make clouds by day, none by night. And you just can't make this stuff up. So what they're doing is something called the access flights. And the idea is pretty simple. We want to do this alternative fuel effects on contrails and cruise emissions. They do a whole lot of science on, how this affects clouds and social welfare costs, agricultural, forestry, ecosystems, social effects like people freaking the fuck out online about chemtrails. But this is what it looks like. I mean, they're literally up there flying behind the planes, to test the chemtrails. And you can see it right about here. This is the metal particles. And off the chart. Now they're in the actual plume, testing what the chemtrails are doing. All of this is an experiment. And that's what I'm trying to, get to people, that they really don't know what the hell they're doing. They're constantly screwing with the jet fuel to try to figure out, hey, are we cooling the planet or are we heating it up? Because it seems like we're melting the fucking poles.
It's just if we're going to melt joke.
Yeah, so this is from the Access Cruise Emission Time Series. So, all the evidence in the world is right there, man. You really should just dig into it. You can do all this by going over to weathermodificationhistory.com, clicking on doped jet fuel or artificial clouds. Come to climateviewer.com, go to the tag artificial clouds. When they make clouds during the day, that's solar radiation management. That's the sun coming in and they're trying to block it. But whenever it hits the ground and it's supposed to go back to space, this is now called Earth radiation management, not SRM, ERM. And the reason why is because those clouds are making trap heat and then it bounces up and goes like this. So if they can get rid of those clouds at night, they think they can cool the planet during the day and then let that heat escape to space at night. This is called cirrus cloud thinning or cirrus cloud seeding.
So these guys are all bought into the global warming thing, though? I don't really understand the motivation because
it's two parts.
It's just mind blowing to me that they're trying to play around with all this stuff based on junk science to begin with. I mean, we were under a mile or two of ice 12,000 years ago here in Calgary, Canada.
Yeah.
I mean, of course it's warming. We are still technically in an ice age if you look back far enough. The cycles. I mean, it's crazy that they are just doing all this based on.
So it's kind of like this. I tell people that the sky is like a lake. Some people like to swim in the lake. Some people want to skip rocks on the lake. Other people want to fish in the lake. Some people want to ride their jet ski in the lake. But everybody's using the lake for a different reason.
Some people pee in it.
Yeah. I mean, I like to pee in the lake when I'm in there. I don't tell anybody. Just between me and you. But yeah, so this is kind of like a tug of war. So you've got the climate scientists who believe global warming is real, and they're trying to mitigate the warming effects of cirrus clouds. But the truth of the matter is that for 100 years, they've been trying to melt the poles to get to the oil and gas under it. And now it's well documented on weathermodificationhistory.com and climateviewer.com. So what's the real conspiracy behind chemtrails? Greenwashing. If you've not heard this term, it's making a dirty industry appear to be green. And that's what biofuels are all about, is greenwashing the airline industry while they try to circumvent getting attacked by the carbon cabal, aka the technocrats and the carbon taxes.